All right, I want to jump back on here, continue going with these recaps like we've been doing around the rest of the OJLL playoffs. So, obviously, the story of last night, Beaches losing 11-5 in Orangeville. We were on the call. I was on the call with Matthew Carrick for this game. And, obviously a tough end to the summer for a Beaches team that had Minto Cup aspirations. And, there's no other way to put it. I've chosen to focus mostly on the lacrosse, and that'll stay the same today. But, obviously a really difficult way to end what was a summer with a lot of promise. In the end, they just ran into a really good Orangeville team. I think that's kind of my big takeaway. This Northmen team is deep. They're old. And they're exceptionally good in between the pipes. I think if there's a takeaway from the series, it's that Connor O'Toole was really phenomenal. 8 goals in Game 1 for the Beaches, 6 in Game 2, 5 in Game 3, including a scoreless first and third period. O'Toole was just really, really good in this game, and I think it started to wear on the Beaches mentally a little bit throughout the game when you feel like you're not getting very many good looks, and then you can't finish the ones that you do get that really starts to wear on you. So it was it was a good push in the second period there for the Beaches with the 5 goals, but just could never seem, they got it back to, I believe, 6-5. And then, didn't end up scoring after that. It just felt like, they could never really keep up the push there for more than a few minutes. For this Orangeville team, obvious aspirations now to head to Coquitlam, but a lot of work left. We'll see what happens with the other series. We'll talk about the Mimico-Brampton series here in a second, but, that team, looks like a Minto Cup contender, no doubt about it. And I've been talking about it throughout the playoffs, but the age is really important, and the depth of this Orangeville team is really important. 11 goals last night. No one had more than 2. So early in the series, we saw Spallina really leading the charge, Liam Matthews as well. This one was balanced. Trey Deer ends up leading and scoring in the game with 1 goal and 6 assists, but like I said, no one had more than 2, and they really had deep scoring, and that includes guys like Cohen Jennings, who didn't even play in the first game. So they're bringing guys off the bench who are coming in and giving them multiple goals. Also, Dylan Sanderson had his best game of the year, or of the playoffs, for Orangeville. Ends up with 2 and 2, was really dynamic and felt like he was dictating on the offensive side of the ball, which is pretty impressive. For a rookie, definitely in conversation for Rookie of the Year. Another story is Aiden Long getting another one in transition. He scored in every game. This one, I believe, was an empty netter at the end of the game, but they kind of won the transition battle. Beaches won it in this game, but I think Orangeville probably won it overall. The battle of scoring outside of set offensive sets. So. Beyond that, there really wasn't a whole lot to analyze for me. Orangeville was probably a better team by a smaller margin than the final score would suggest, but O'Toole was just phenomenal. And on the power play, they did a great job of really limiting Firth and Collison and trying to make other guys beat them. And a lot of times O'Toole had to be up to the task, and he made a lot of really quiet saves and then some pretty electric ones too. So. And then the other thing is just a tough, obviously, building to win. And Tony Rose is always going to be tough for visiting teams. I think, if there's one thing from the summer that really had an impact on this series, it was the home floor advantage being in Tony Rose. We saw the most competitive game in this series be at Ted Reeve. Not a huge surprise there. And with the 5-game scenario, it was going to make that Game 2 really tough, right? You lose Game 1 on the road, you have to go home and win Game 2 because coming back, trying to win 2 out of 3 at Tony Rose is going to be a tall order. So, again, focusing on the lacrosse part, what an incredible run for Beaches. Willem Firth with one of the best summers I've ever seen. And that's an opinion shared by a lot of guys that I've talked to this summer. He's on a very short list of guys that have played at that level for a whole summer. And the crazy thing is that he's coming back. Just absurd. People have mentioned a lot in the field game. It looks a lot like another number 51 that played for the Cornell Big Red, and in the box game he looks like him too. So an incredible summer, and credit as well to the coaching staff of Beaches, who held it together amongst a pretty Matthew Carrick on the OJLL calls was referencing the mental exhaustion and the physical exhaustion as well of any OJLL season in 3 games and not very many nights here. So we'll see how the awards shake out. They certainly have. I think they probably have my vote for coaching staff of the year. Just an incredible job getting this group together and trying to keep them together through times when a lot of other teams would have folded. They really had to push to make the playoffs, and they could have packed up their tents and went home a long time ago, and they didn't. They hung in there. They battled really hard, and they should be tremendously proud of themselves. Unfortunately, just wasn't meant to be, once they got to this series. And then going forward, the challenge for anyone facing Orangeville is you got to hope for several guys to have an off night, right? We've seen Bowie Horseman was quiet in this series. He's a guy that can have 4 in a game. Brian Jackman has been excellent. And, you have to prepare for Spallina, Matthews, Deere, and then all these other guys can really burn you. And then you can count in the transition and the defense. And, that's how good teams, typically do it. It's really, really tough to game plan for this team. And then, they obviously have injury prevention or injury ability to withstand injuries too, because they got these other guys that they can pull into the lineup. So, it's going to be an interesting test here. We'll see. I think their seed depends on who wins here. They'll be watching the Six Nations series very closely because it will reseed after the first round. So if Nations wins, as far as I understand it, we will see Orangeville versus Six Nations. And then if Peterborough can come all the way back there, then it'll be Orangeville versus the winner of Burlington and St. Catharines. And then flipping to the Mimico-Brampton series, Mimico finishes off the sweep there. Not a huge surprise, I don't think, after Brampton traded their guys to Orangeville. That's O'Toole, Bone, and Horseman, who were all really good for Orangeville and really kind of put that team over the edge in terms of, especially over Beaches in that series. And I think kind of solidified them as the favorites. So Brampton fought really hard. Another team that could have packed up their tents and gone home. They had a really strong finish to the regular season when some folks probably counted them out. And overall, a fairly competitive series here with Mimico. Again, once they went home and lost at Memorial in Game 2, it gets tough to go back on the road for Game 3. These best-of-5s, they may not seem that much shorter than a best-of-7, but when the home team wins 1 and you lose Game 2, the other team loses Game 2, then they can get wrapped up pretty quickly. So, nothing to hang their heads about. Is an excellent season. Some really good players on that Brampton team. Nolan Byrne, one of the best returning players in the OJLL on a short list with guys like Firth, Matthews, Deere, those guys have felt like they've been a junior forever. And then Nolan Byrne will be right there with some of those guys in terms of guys looking to really lead the league next year. So credit to Brampton getting themselves back in the playoffs and having a strong year. And, nothing to hang their heads about there. On the Mimico side, this is what you wanted to see, right? It's been an up and down year for the Mountaineers at times, but you wanted to see them kind of impose their will on Brampton here and go up 3-0. And I think the top 5 scorers for Mimico were all fifth-years, right? If you look at the OJLL website, there's little black stars beside the fifth-year guys. There's a lot of stars by that measure on the Mimico team. So an old veteran group. Justin Lee led the scoring in this one. Finn Thompson had 3 and 2. That's a really good sign for him to be scoring the ball, right? Teams are going to really try to make him earn stuff in the playoffs and for him to be scoring the ball. And then Isaiah Moran-Weeks had a hat trick as well, and he's really an X factor. I think, maybe in the Beaches Orangeville series, Beach just couldn't quite find a couple extra goals, and Moran-Weeks is a guy who can just go get you a couple. And, I think that's going to be really important throughout the playoffs. So, again, we'll see what happens with Six Nations, but if we are heading eventually to a Mimico Orangeville series, I think that'll be a really fun series between 2 pretty big teams and 2 old teams. And if you haven't watched Mimico yet this year, they're bigger than a lot of teams, especially up front. Lee, Dudemaine, Waters, and Thompson are all 6 feet plus, and the smaller guys, Roussel and Moran-Weeks, play, a lot bigger than their stature. So they can really cause problems for you offensively. And then on the back end, they can really move, and they got some big bodies back there too. So I think that'll be an interesting kind of thing to watch throughout the rest of the playoffs is some of the teams that are slightly smaller on the back end. Maybe Mimico can punish them just a little bit. Again, it helps playing at Mimico Arena, one of the smaller arenas, one of the smaller rinks in the OJLL. So we'll see what happens. Waiting to see St. Catharines Burlington tonight. I'll be on the call there for the OJLL. Expecting a good one. That's been the most competitive series so far, aside from Six Nations and Peterborough, and the road team has yet to lose, actually. So St. Catharines looking to defend Canada Summer Games Park for the first time in this series. It'll also be me and Matt's first time getting out to that series this summer, so looking forward to a good one there, and hope you can join us. Thanks. We'll keep these updates going all throughout the playoffs, and thanks for listening.